From 1965 to 1977, Srila Prabhupada traveled the world preaching, working tirelessly translating his books, while at the same time keeping in constant communication with his disciples through personal letters. It is through these letters that we are able to derive life lessons, material and spiritual, as well as appreciate Srila Prabhupada's loving care for his disciples. Let us now hear from one of those fortunate devotees who personally received correspondence from His Divine Grace.
So I joined or moved into, as we used to say, the Berkeley Temple, joined the Hare Krishna movement in September of 1969. I was a student, and I moved into the Berkeley ISKCON Center and really became a full-time devotee. And so the semester was approaching, and I asked the temple president if I should stay in college, finish, or drop out and just do full-time service. And he said, I don't know, ask the regional secretary. So the regional secretary is a brahmachari named Tamal Krishna. So I asked him, and he said, I don't know, ask Prabhupada. But that's what ISKCON was like, I don't know, ask Prabhupada. So I wrote a letter to Prabhupada, and the answer he gave me, I was very fortunate. It became the mission of my life. It's like Prabhupada when he, the first instruction he received from his guru. So Prabhupada gave me that blessing. Prabhupada said, stay in school. I want you to be nicely educated so that you can present Krishna consciousness to other educated people. And that really became my life's mission. And so sort of follow-up from that, when I was temple president in Houston, in Grihastha, so on June 1st, 1972, Prabhupada wrote to me, and you must all study very scrutinizingly all of the books. I mean, think of the word scrutinizingly, so that when the need arises, you can repeat in your own words their purport. So what's interesting is two things here. Prabhupada saying, study scrutinizingly. In other words, don't just read as a pious act, I just read, but scrutinizingly. And one thing I've always said about reading Prabhupada's books, a lot of what you get out of it depends on what you bring to it. So if you have questions, if you're intellectually alive and you're looking for answers, you'll discover many things that you didn't know were there or wouldn't have noticed. And Prabhupada said also, I will be very pleased. I think each word is important to really get to Prabhupada. I will be very pleased if you contribute articles to BTG. By writing regularly, what you read will become realized. As much as possible, read, chant, and preach. This is our life and soul. If we keep to this simple formula, then there is no doubt that we will be victorious wherever we go, and very soon we shall be the only religion in the world. So that's very striking comments, isn't it? And now there's another one. Again, I was president of Houston. Prabhupada said, so as president, now you will be forced to advance in Krishna consciousness because you must always set the highest example yourself. And I think this is Krishna's special favoring you. So it's a question of honor. Because I was the president of ISKCON Houston, I'm forced to advance because I can't be a hypocrite. So the assumption there in Prabhupada's letter is that I assume that you have good character and hypocrisy is not an option for you. And then he said, try to always see the highest purity is maintained in all respects. Become yourself very convinced of this Krishna conscious philosophy. Be always preaching and trying to understand some basic points from different angles of vision. So Prabhupada didn't just say, read my books, but try to understand them. Try to be educated. Try to present them in an educated way. So it's not just like how many minutes or hours did you read Prabhupada's books this week, but there's a whole strategy. There's a whole process of reading them in a very profitable way. Trying to understand some basic points from different angles of vision, which can be sociological, It can be aesthetic. It can be political science, philosophical, religious. Keep the devotees in your temple always satisfied and jolly, and that will be your success. So Prabhupada is telling me that as a temple president, I have to serve the devotees. I have to keep the devotees satisfied and jolly, keep them blissful. So I think there's so much in these letters. Uh, so let's see. Now you must all three. Who is this? Um, Along with other sannyasis, GBC members, other leaders, become very serious to actually give the humankind the greatest welfare, namely this Krishna consciousness movement. So you get a letter like that. What does it mean to be very serious? I think it means, like Prabhupada said, you have to think. How do you actually transform a society? That requires intelligence. Your task ahead is very huge. Your task ahead is very huge, but it will be quite simple and easy if you simply do as I'm doing. You must become conversant in every feature, wherever it is needed throughout the society. Our first business is to preach to the devotees and to maintain the highest standard of Vaishnava education. Management must be there as well. Actually, this is after I was a sannyasi. I took sannyas. So the Prabhupada says our first management must be there as well, just as I am preaching daily from Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, but I'm also going to the bank, making investments, seeing the trial balance, making letters, seeing how things are going on like that. So you must become expert in all these matters, just as I am giving you example. Now, what's interesting here, this was 2 months, approximately 2 months or a month and a half after I took sannyas. And I was with Satsarupa. We were doing a traveling college program, which Prabhupada liked very much. But we had talked like, okay, now we're sannyasis, no more management. We can just preach. So we both wrote letters to Prabhupada. He wrote us back the same thing, like, do what I'm doing. You have to preach, but then you have to practically manage the fruits of the preaching, namely the people are coming. So, you can't just be sort of like an idle philosopher. So there's so many, like here's another letter, Prabhupada saying, one thing is we are observing here in Europe, many, many hippies have become so disgusted with material life, but they are also now so much degraded. They will not hear our philosophy, simply mocking. That happened in Europe. So we should be expert to remove their doubts, but as far as preaching to the general public, especially the hippie class, it is better not to preach very much philosophy. Just get them to chant Hare Krishna, which is what Prabhupada, Lord Chaitanya did with the common people. And then Prabhupada said, that is a very good program that you have begun, namely traveling from center to center and preaching, especially from the scholarly point of view, of being able to understand this Krishna philosophy very scientifically and positively. In other words, not just the negative things, don't do this, don't do that. So one thing I want to mention, a general observation, is that Prabhupada very much was reciprocating with me when I was just, Joe Brahmachari. He just wrote me nice letters and, be happy, chant Hare Krishna. Then when I took sannyas, the letters changed because Prabhupada saw me as someone supposed to be one of the leaders of the preaching. Otherwise, why did I take sannyas? Not just to get free lunch, which I did get, by the way. So then when I became a GBC, it bumped up again. And hopefully that'll come out from the GBC letters because Prabhupada really saw me, I mean, obviously as his disciple, as his servant and all that, but in another sense, without, ignoring the hierarchy, as sort of like almost like a colleague, like because he sort of let me in. This is my strategy to save the world. And you were responsible. So speak to me much more about the big picture, how we change the planet, practical strategies. And so Prabhupada very much reciprocated with devotees, not only in the sense of answering whatever question they asked, but the more we took responsibility for Prabhupada, the more we were really following him. Okay, he's a sannyasi, I took sannyas. Prabhupada is managing the world, I'll manage part of the world for Prabhupada. The more responsibility we took, the more he saw us in that more responsible position and gave instructions and insights which were relevant to someone who had now assumed that higher level of responsibility. This is very interesting. Prabhupada was um, in Dallas. Prabhupada was very, very, concerned about the Dallas Center because the Gurukula was there. It was important to Prabhupada. So then a godbrother of ours named Stoka Krishna had left Dallas and went back to LA. I guess he was from that area. And it's funny because I had nothing to do with that. I wasn't at GBC. I had nothing to do with the management of Dallas, but Prabhupada was so upset that he left that he was writing to leaders about it, even though my letter to Prabhupada had nothing to do with that. So he said, now I understand from Satsarupa that Stoka Krishna left to Los Angeles. So Prabhupada was concerned about me. Are you traveling alone now? What shall be your program? A loving father, and just, like, are you going to, you're going to get yourself in a mess, or what are you going to do now? So then Prabhupada wrote, this constantly changing managers is not good. We shall develop more progressively by sticking in one place and working. Not that one week we have 3 presidents. That is not good. Our managers should be very responsible for developing their center to the topmost standard. Why this restlessness? It is just like one man is holding government post by getting votes. So today or tomorrow or next day, but he will have to go out. Then another man comes, then another. In this way, democratic system, no one becomes responsible for the welfare of the citizens. Very relevant today, isn't it? Only they want to take for themselves as much as they can before they have to get out. So they do not take real interest in their duty. It is a little like that. And then Prabhupada says, now these are very interesting sentences. My idea is that the leaders must agree to stick at one place, even they may have to remain there lifelong. That is the ideal leader, one who is conscious of his duty. But you are a sannyasi, and sannyasi's duty is different. Travel widely and preach. That is sannyas. So I'm very happy to hear that you are doing that. Now go on vigorously preaching and distributing books, especially among the college students, and utilize every moment to spread Krishna consciousness knowledge to everyone. That will be the perfection of your life. So as I read the letters now, I appreciate even more than I did then just how totally engaged Prabhupada was. He was the engine that was driving everything. Everything from the highest philosophy, the deepest realizations of Krishna, to the most practical management. And that's something that really set Prabhupada apart from all these other so-called gurus that came. First of all, Prabhupada had spiritual power they couldn't even dream of. And secondly, he was a much better manager than they were. And so that's why ISKCON has survived in all these, because you were around, all these other sort of new age, guru from India movements. Where are they? They're just gone for the most part. And so Prabhupada, spiritually and administratively, was just on a completely different level. So Prabhupada really liked my college program. This is from 23rd December, 72. Especially, I'm so much pleased to hear. I mean, you couldn't imagine a more encouraging, loving spiritual father. Especially, I'm so much pleased to hear that you are traveling with a few men to each and every college campus to preach. That is wonderful news. Now try to build up and develop that program to perfection. Typical Prabhupada statement, like it's really good what you're doing, but you're not there yet. Keep it going, improve it, progress, expand it. That was Prabhupada. He was the supreme personality of ISKCON, cheerleader of the, commander. He was everything. Now try to build up and develop that program to perfection so that simply by hearing and seeing you, the students will want to come forward to join this great movement. Now, and then the last sentence of this letter, when I read it, I was stunned, just trying to figure out like what does that mean? Prabhupada wrote, I still remember the moment I read this for the first time. And distribute books, as many as you can. And I think you can distribute many millions of books alone. That Krishna will help you do. So when I read that, of course, first I was just, and then I actually started thinking, oh my God, the order from the guru. So I thought, okay, if I really get serious, if I can distribute 100 small books a day, maybe that's like 600 a week, and that's maybe a 2,500 a month. And the numbers don't work. And then I tried to, because I was selling books then, and I realized that there's no way I can fulfill Prabhupada's statement. And then I thought, I wonder if it means I'm supposed to write books eventually. But I still remember that letter. Prabhupada was so like whatever, even when we thought we were successful, Prabhupada would, of course, praise us. He would encourage us, good boy. But then he would say, but actually, now you've got to go to the next level. So, oh, and then something I never did. Oh, he said the green sheets. I don't know. I don't know if maybe they were actually green. The green I sent him because in those days, colored paper. The green sheets advertising our books to the college professors are very, very good. Very, very good. You may send copies to all centers. What happened is, and Prabhupada really appreciated this, when I was in Corvallis, Oregon, Oregon State University, I thought that the BBT should have a book catalog, which it didn't have then. And of course, there was no such thing as a website. So you had to have a catalog. And so what I did is I went to the student store at Oregon State. I bought a scissors and some scotch tape, and stuff like that. And then I cut up the current Back to Godhead magazine with pictures and everything. I literally cut and pasted and designed the first a catalog for the BBT. And then I sent it to them, and that was the official BBT catalog for the next few years, basically as I'd sent it. So Prabhupada really liked that. And then I would try to get professors to use Prabhupada's books in their courses. And I also created the BBT library party. And the way that happened, I was in Prabhupada's garden in Los Angeles alone with him, and he asked me if his books were in the libraries and in bookstores. And I said, well, I don't think, many people would actually check out the books from a library. They probably made it very clear, wrong answer. He made it very, very clear. That is the wrong answer. And so I just said, okay, Prabhupada, we're going to put them in the libraries. And then soon after that, I went back out to travel and preach. And the first set of Prabhupada's books sold in the library was at the University of Iowa in Iowa City. I walked in, they directed me to the gentleman who was in charge of Oriental acquisitions, and he bought a set of books, and I was really excited, and I called because there was no order form. I mean, the BBT, they didn't, that was probably the first set of books ever sold as a set. And the BBT didn't even they had no order, they had to invent an order form. So, but that's how it all started. And it all was because of what Prabhupada told me in his garden. And of course, all these letters, um, and books, I mean, Prabhupada was just so hammering away on this point. This is the first letter I have here when I became GBC in Mayapur in 1974. Prabhupada sent for me. Satrup came and called me, And we ran to Prabhupada, and we'd never walk. If Prabhupada called you, you'd never walk, you'd run. Because we were young, and when I got in there, the whole GBC was there. The whole GBC in those days was 12 devotees. And Prabhupada said, we were thinking that you could be the GBC for Latin America. What do you think? So just for 1 second, I thought, well, Prabhupada wants me to decide. Then I realized, no, actually, Prabhupada really wants me to do this. So then, just a few weeks after he made me the GBC, he wrote me a letter. And he said, after I'd, of course, come back to the West, I was pleased to appoint you as GBC of South America in the hope that you will organize the printing and distribution of my literature there on the scale of the US and European zones. I've been informed there is a very good chance for spreading Krishna consciousness in South America. And of course, eventually, a couple years later, we were the world champions of book distribution. So, okay, now I'm GBC. So, again, getting a whole different category of letters. These are things that Prabhupada didn't say to me when I was a sannyasi. And the sannyasi letters were not the same as the letters I got as a householder temple president. So Prabhupada wrote, as GBC, your first responsibility, these are very important eternal instructions. As GBC, your first responsibility is to keep yourself spiritually fit and see that all the devotees in your zone of management are chanting 16 rounds, rising early, and strictly avoiding the sinful activities. If they are doing this, now listen to this, if they are doing this, then management will be at your finger's end. I guess normally taking the tip of your finger. In other words, if I make sure that the devotees are chanting their rounds, following the principles, rising early, strictly avoiding the sinful activities, management will be at your finger's end. Of course, I'm encouraged to hear that in each center you have stressed the distribution of my books. And you are seeing that devotees daily go out for Sankirtan as a primary devotional item. So you have a very wide range of area to cover. It's all of Latin America. And many things to look after. Please do it very soberly, consulting when necessary with your GBC godbrothers. Our progress is slow but sure. When walking down the street, we first place one foot down, and when it is firm, we take another step. We want to firmly establish centers. In other words, Prabhupada is saying don't just do a superficial expansion that then sort of collapses. We want to firmly establish centers in South America. I fully agree that the centers should be, as far as possible, manned by men who are native to the country. That's something Prabhupada stressed, which of course been forgotten. I mean, in the long list of things Prabhupada said that have been forgotten, that will make our position even stronger. Just as in the USA, all you men and women have managed. As far as counsel is concerned, I probably asked him for advice. Simply keep up your fresh utsaha, or enthusiasm for service. Keep that enthusiasm fresh. That will accomplish wonders. So in other words, the way I understood that is, I have to be advancing spiritually. Because if I'm just kind of, maintaining myself, then today is like yesterday and tomorrow is like today. It's not like when you first discover Krishna consciousness, you have this extraordinary enthusiasm, because you found something most precious. So Prabhupada said, keep up your fresh utsaha, or enthusiasm for service. That will accomplish wonders. So what I understand is if we want to do wonders to restore Prabhupada's Western mission, which should be the number one job for everyone, whoever's actually paying attention, restoring Prabhupada's Western mission, then we have to be advancing. I can't advance Prabhupada's mission or restore what he gave us if I'm not personally advancing in my own spiritual life. So that's what I understood from that. And then, of course, Prabhupada, we would just send him names and he would send back the Sanskrit names and initiate people, of course, on his behalf. Um, Again, the same point. I'm very glad to note that you are seeing that the devotees are maintaining the devotional practices. This is the secret to success. Therefore, I'm always stressing it. And if you stress it, if you also stress it and show yourself as an ideal Vaishnava, then you are my representative in fullness. We're not after titles and designations. I mean, every sentence is so powerful and so important. We are not after titles and designations. Lord Chaitanya made it a principle that we must teach by personal example. This is what I have tried to do. So if all of you, my disciples, do this, then the future of our movement will be glorious. And then he was very happy that we were printing books. Whatever we are is resting on these books. So far, reading them and distributing them. This should be our only motto. These are powerful instructions, aren't they?
Very, very much so.
Your invitation to visit Mexico and Caracas sounds very nice, and I shall be very pleased to come there. Prabhupada was so happy to get literature. I'm due receipt of your letter with enclosed Spanish BBT. Have noted the contents very carefully and looked through the new Spanish BTG. This new BTG is done very nicely. The printing is very beautiful. And I thank you very much for doing such a nice job. I'm very glad to hear that you have printed 100,000 copies of this magazine. Now give them to everyone. Also, I'm very happy to hear the other books will be coming out very soon. If you can finish Bhagavad Gita as it is in Spanish and show me at the Mayapur festival, that will be very sublime. Please print as many books as possible. This is my real pleasure. By printing these books of our Krishna consciousness movement, of our Krishna conscious philosophy, in so many different languages, we can actually inject our movement into the masses of persons all over the world, especially there in the Western countries. And we can literally turn whole nations into Krishna conscious nations. Who thinks like that nowadays? I think something which has been lost from Prabhupada, which is absolutely essential, and I would be insincere, just not faithful to Prabhupada, I didn't mention it. When Prabhupada was here, because of Prabhupada saying things like this, we were thinking about the world. How do you make the world Krishna conscious? How do you transform countries? Who talks about that nowadays? So we really need to get back to Prabhupada's mood. So, and about Prabhupada's plans to come to Latin America. Again, also I've received the books newly printed in Spanish language, Krishna Volume 1, Beyond Birth and Death, and the new Spanish BTG. The printing job is done very nicely. I hope to see many, many more of them coming in the future. This is Prabhupada. Like right in these two sentences, and I gave you other examples. He would just lavish, he would give us praise and encouragement. Now you have to do more. So it was always those two things, expressing so much appreciation for what we've done and then insisting that we increase it, we do more. That was the mood with Prabhupada. So then the one big boo-boo, because Prabhupada, it's interesting, he sent me to Latin America, he never talked about any practical things. Details. He would just say print books. He didn't tell me how to print books. And so I was getting very frustrated in 1975 because the government was harassing us in Mexico City and the level of devotees we were making, it was just not a good level. And so I was thinking maybe of closing that center. So then Prabhupada said, when our Mexico City branch is open, how can we close it? That building there is very nice. And because Prabhupada had come there actually just literally like 2 or 3 months before I wrote my letter. And we have been there for 5 years now. I am not at all in favor of closing such a temple. Stay there in that building somehow or other. And if you like, you may also open a center in Guadalajara, which we did. We can keep men in Mexico City who are approved by the government. Why should we close it? So I never forgot that lesson. Um, and thank you for distributing so many books and so on. So that was very bold. We also had some devotees in Guyana, and there was a Mr. Rama there who was kind of, giving us legal trouble and sort of wanted to take our property. Prabhupada said the best thing to do in Guyana is to kick out Mr. Rama. But if it is not practical, then let him buy us another house of our choice for our use, at least as good as that house, if not better. And then some legal advice. So Prabhupada he was like all pervading in ISKCON. How to do practical things, how to be in the right consciousness, enthusiasm, the principles, legal advice. He just did it all. He, he would just, cover all the bases. Perfect Acharya. So I wrote Prabhupada on December 22nd, 1975, and which Prabhupada mentions in his letter. He had that formality. I begged to thank you for your letter, and then he dated. And I'm glad to learn everything's going nicely in your zone. Very interesting. He made an observation in South America, the people are not so rich nor so enlightened as their North American neighbors, but they are very nice people and somewhat pious, and that is their credit. Now, just try to deliver Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message to them. As you are doing, go on publishing books more and more in Spanish and Portuguese. Prabhupada would never just thank you or compliment you. It was always, this is very nice, thank you. Now you have to do more. It was always both those things. Uh, and please thank all the devotees of the Spanish BBT for the beautiful edition of Bhagavad Gita as it is. This book publishing was the most important work of my Guru Maharaj, and he ordered me to continue in the Western world. So I'm very much indebted to all of you for helping me to carry out the order of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami. And then I asked, Prabhupada had mentioned that the different GBC could come and spend a month with him as his secretary. So I wrote and I asked if I could come for February. And Prabhupada said, Jagadish Prabhu also was thinking to come as my GBC secretary for the month of February. If you come in February, I have no objection. I can have 36 secretaries. So it was Jagadish actually didn't go there. I mean, he didn't actually go, so it was just me. But and then he says, if your business will not suffer, you are welcome anytime. In other words, be responsible. Your service comes first. And interestingly, Prabhupada hardly gave me any secretarial duties when I was there. He really somehow he trusted I would understand points, and he would call me to his room. There were things he wanted to tell me, thinking that I would understand it. And so and then of course I had the service of whenever a lot of times his room would be full, darshan room with Bengalis, because many important Bengalis would come to see him and other people. And so if anyone somehow left the room without getting some prasadam, Prabhupada would send me after them. So I'd grab some prasadam. I'd literally many times like run down the hall to catch up with them because someone got away without the prasadam. So, and then Prabhupada said, I wish to remain with all my disciples together but we have to do preaching work and therefore have to remain separate. But actually, there's no question of separation for one engaged in Lord Krishna's service. So it's very enlightening and encouraging, just observations about the nature of devotee association. That whole thing of, as Prabhupada said, the serving the Vani or serving the Vapu, serving the message, or just the physical presence. That's all coming from Prabhupada. Prabhupada really shaped our understanding into a correct understanding. No sentimentalism, and yet constant feeling and appreciation and love. So Prabhupada gave us this perfect love without sentimentalism. And of course, we know that he stressed that service through Vani, through serving the instructions, is more important. After I'd been Prabhupada's secretary in February of 76, and of course, I spent more time with Prabhupada continuously than ever before because, I mean, it was so nice. It's Mayapur back then, there weren't that many devotees, and several times I would be the only person on the morning walk in Mayapur. I mean, imagine now. And Prabhupada would tell me so many things. So but more than ever before, I just became accustomed to just being with Prabhupada a lot. And so then as soon as the festival was over, like right after Gaur Purnima, with this new, not familiarity, but this new sort of comfort and just feeling at home with Prabhupada, I went into his room and the first thing Prabhupada said to me, this is the first day after the festival, is this, personal external association is not so important. We want to serve. So I offered obeisance, sat up, heard that, went down again, and off I went to fly back to my zone. So Prabhupada could be the most loving without a tinge of sentimentalism. There was never sentimentalism. So there was pure spiritual emotion of love and affection, but never sentimentalism. And that comes out very strongly, of course, in Prabhupada's letters. Just the definition in the dictionary of sentimentalism, the excessive expression of feelings of tenderness, sadness, or nostalgia in behavior, writing, or speech. So Prabhupada, everything was in perfect measure. The affection and love was in the perfect measure. The no nonsense, get to work was in the perfect measure. So then Prabhupada was very happy. The new Krishna books. Please offer all the devotees my blessings. Their enthusiasm for distributing my books will please me very much. Not only I will be pleased, but my Guru Maharaj will also be pleased, and they will all be blessed. This is very good news. Pritivite ache jata nagarari gram sarvatra prachar hoibe moranam. This is the way of preaching, to spread the news of Krishna in every town and village all over the world. Thank you very much. And then by the time we get to, I guess this is October 76, Prabhupada, I think, clearly is starting to feel not well. And so he wrote back to me, please accept my blessings. I'm due receipt of your letter, undated. I kind of missed that one. He would actually tell you, you forgot to put the date on it with all the things he was thinking about. So he took these formalities seriously. Prabhupada was obviously the incarnation of Raganuga Bhakti, very spontaneous, very unpredictable, and very affectionate to us, and yet your letter undated, and have noted the contents. And then he just said, thank you very much for your very good printing and preaching work. May Lord Chaitanya bless you. And that was all. And I think that's October 7th, 1976. I think that Prabhupada is starting to feel not as much energy. And also he encouraged me so many times. Reading that now, what I take from it is you're a big boy now. And, I've encouraged you so much. I've instructed you so much. Now just go out and do it. I don't need to pat you on the head every time you print a book. So, so it's, what Prabhupada said was so important and what he didn't say was so important. Oh my God. I don't know what was wrong with me because the next letter is, I'm in receipt of your letter dated nil. I didn't get the memo from the previous answer. So now it's kind of embarrassing, for someone that kind of prided himself on being sharp. I was a little dull there. So Prabhupada said, I'm in receipt of your letter dated nil, accompanied by 2 copies of the first edition of the Portuguese Bhagavad Gita. It is very nice. You are doing very nicely. This enthusiasm is required. It is the basic principle in making advancement in Krishna service. It's not just a sort of, just sort of mechanical following of rules. It's not, as I say, bhakti mimamsa. It's not automatic. Prabhupada said, this enthusiasm is required. It is the basic principle in making advancement in Krishna's service. Now, another interesting thing, you have written to say you want to start printing Chaitanya Charitamrita. I think it is too difficult. There's the book. It is better for the time being to simply continue with the Bhagavatam. Chaitanya Charitamrita is the postgraduate study. That's not the kind of thing we would have predicted. Prabhupada saying, don't publish the CC now. It's almost like the devotees are not ready for it. You have written that chanting, here's another, these are such valuable instructions. You have written that chanting, dancing, and book distribution are going on nicely. Prasadam distribution should also be introduced. This will make the program even more effective. Oh, this is very interesting. And I think and very relevant to ISKCON today. In fact, I gave a talk about that, sort of sponsored by the North American RGB. Here's a letter dated 16th January 1977. And so literally just a few weeks before that, for the first time ever, someone defeated the Radha Damodar Party, TKG's Radha Damodar Party in the December marathon. For one who wasn't there, the December marathon, it was the World Series, the Super Bowl, the Olympics, the World Cup, everything put together. Wasn't it? It was just, and so in my zone, this is a letter written in 16th January 77. So in the 1976 December book distribution marathon, for the first time ever, someone defeated Radha Damodar, and that was the Latin American zone. In fairness to TKG, we had like many times more devotees because we had many countries. He was just a traveling Sankirtan party. So I would say pound for pound, man for man, he probably did better than us. But and then Prabhupada said, yes, I'm very pleased with your book distribution because nobody was able to defeat Radha Damodar, TSKP, previously. Radha Damodar is himself pleased upon you. Sometimes the Lord wants to be defeated by his devotee. Nobody can defeat the Lord, but still, he desires like that sometimes. That is his mercy. So then, actually, just very soon after I got this letter, Prabhupada came to Los Angeles, and both Tamal Krishna Goswami and I went to LA to see him. And we were walking on the Palisades, the Santa Monica Palisades Park, overlooking the ocean. And Prabhupada, he was kind of teasing Tamal, it was all in good fun. And in Prabhupada's English, he was saying like, Tamal, like, are you going to take that? What are you going to do about that? And we were laughing, of course. And then Prabhupada stopped. And a lot of times when Prabhupada wanted to really make a point, he stopped and he sort of planted his cane down because he wanted to make a point. He just said 4 words that I never forgot. And that is, I like this competition. Those 4 words, I like this because without the competition, we probably would have sold 100, literally 100 times less books. And Prabhupada saw that we were like, we were brothers. There was nothing, there was no animosity between us. And so he loved it. And he said that I like this competition. And so my conviction reading these letters, and that's the last letter I have here, my conviction is that it is our sacred duty, uh, because Prabhupada said before he left, if you cannot increase what I've given you, at least maintain it. So whatever Prabhupada had built up and has not been maintained, like, for example, having many thriving, flourishing, growing Western Hare Krishna temples all over North America, we are duty bound before we leave this world to do everything in our power to restore what Prabhupada gave us. So that's really our mission, to read these letters and to measure ourselves against these letters. Are we living up to these instructions and these pleas from Prabhupada, these urging us to do things in a certain way, and the extent to which we are not keeping up anymore, we have to go back and fix it.
I really thank you for your realizations and inspiring to recollect these letters that you were fortunate to receive from Prabhupada.
Thank you, and thank you. You've done extraordinary service. And Prabhupada Memories and now Prabhupada Letters. I'm sort of keenly aware, have an eye for what is really of great historical significance. And like take the case of Jesus, where I mean, scholars would give a vital organ to have more information, like what did Jesus really teach, and the fact that um, the first sort of little mini biographies, the four Gospels, were written decades after Jesus. The New Testament itself, the book of the Acts of the Apostles, states that all the immediate followers of Jesus that actually were with him and traveled with him, they were illiterate peasants, basically. And then in contrast, Lord Chaitanya attracted the greatest scholars of the time, six Goswamis and so many others. And so Prabhupada is the most extensively documented major religious leader in history. Let's say, ever since the last few thousand years. And so, but then again, what you're doing is, as a historian, I know that millions and millions of people will be thanking you for many, many centuries.
Well, if it wasn't for you and all the other devotees I've interviewed, it would not be there at all. So I'm just facilitating that. So thank you for your kind words.
Yeah,
And
facilitation is essential.
all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
Hari Bol.